Homage to fundamental teacher Buddha Shakyamuni, homage to wisdom warrior Manjushri, homage to all lineage benevolent masters. The Dharma, infinitely profound and subtle, is rarely encountered even in 1,000,000 eons. Now we are able to hear, study, and follow it. May we fully realize Tathagata's true meaning. In order to liberate all sentient beings from samsara, please generate supreme bodhicitta. Well, let's continue with the words of my perfect teacher. First, let me emphasize that when we listen to such teachings, everyone should have a joyful heart and remember that everything is impermanent. We often remember attending teachings in the presence of Guru Rinpoche and other masters. Personally speaking, when I was young, I also attended teachings before many gurus. Now, when I sometimes recall those scenes, my heart feels very envious. But those times have passed and can never be restored in this lifetime. So when all of us Dharma friends gather together to study Buddhism, this is something that, in a person's lifetime, I feel cannot be measured in terms of life's meaning and value. In terms of adjusting one's mental attitude as well, having so many Dharma friends focusing their minds together on the Dharma is an extremely rare occurrence. So we should always maintain a view of impermanence. We will also be like this in the future. We will also remember studying Buddhism together with many Dharma friends back then. When such scenes appear before your eyes, you will probably feel very joyful. So now, relying on the blessings of the Guru and the three jewels, studying together like this is also extremely rare. Listen with a heart of rarity and joy to these supremely excellent teachings that Buddha transmitted. Now, we're teaching about the circumstances where 7 physical and verbal karmas have exceptions in the principle of cause and effect. This issue is also very important. People who haven't studied theory or basic teachings are often unclear about these issues and often cannot practice properly in matters of what to adopt and abandon. So we must understand under what circumstances certain behaviors are permitted for bodhisattvas and tantric practitioners. What is the reason for this? We also told the story of Captain Compassionate Heart earlier. Because bodhisattvas have such strong altruistic minds, without selfishness and without greed, anger, and ignorance, on the surface, some actions performed by bodhisattvas may seem improper, but actually, they become virtuous deeds. I remember Master Aryadeva also said in the 400 stanzas on the middle way, for bodhisattvas, according to their motivation, whether good or bad, everything becomes supremely good because their minds are sovereign through altruism. This means that because bodhisattvas' motivation to benefit beings is extremely sincere, for this reason, on the surface, whether their physical and verbal actions are virtuous or non-virtuous, today a leader is speaking, whether it's you or me, so naturally I speak out whether virtuous or non-virtuous. Everything becomes, any good or bad physical and verbal actions become supremely good. Why? Because their motivation is completely sovereign through benefiting others. They attain sovereignty through benefiting other beings. So we should realize that sometimes what our eyes see as improper may very well be a bodhisattva's way of guiding beings. But if you yourself don't have such realization, you cannot imitate some profound and unfathomable behaviors or practice them carelessly. Wine and meat pass through the intestines, but Buddha remains in the heart. Nowadays, many people who don't want to observe cause and effect use this as an excuse and begin committing major violations of the precepts. Actually, Chan Master Ji Gong said afterward, "If worldly people imitate me, such a person has already entered the demonic path, like entering the demonic path." He said later that if ordinary worldly people truly follow me in drinking alcohol, smoking, or did Chan Master Ji Gong smoke? No. Can you guarantee that? Why? Because you haven't seen it, right? So such behaviors are indeed incomprehensible, because Chan Master Ji Gong at that time also, for example, when someone brought him some pigeon meat, it seems someone had eaten one pigeon's wing, but later when Ji Gong confronted him about it, he wouldn't admit it. Then after he himself ate the meat and drank the wine, after a while he vomited everything out. After vomiting it out, all the pigeons were alive and flew away. But one pigeon was missing a wing. So some especially miraculous behaviors are completely beyond what we worldly people can do. Master Yin Guang also gave many teachings about this in his collected writings. Worldly people and junior practitioners cannot casually imitate these things. If you imitate them, you would indeed be committing major transgressions. But there are also some cases, such as Chan Master Poshan, who ate meat in order to save certain people. In the past, during wartime, there was a person who especially loved killing people. The monk kept advising him not to kill, but he refused to listen. Later the monk said, "I can agree to any request, as long as you don't kill people." He thought it would be impossible for a monk to eat meat. "If you eat meat, I won't kill people." Later, in order to save him, the monk indeed ate it. Chan Master Poshan's chronicles say that to benefit him, just like Captain Compassionate Heart, he ate meat. There are also other cases, such as a great master during the Ming dynasty who also ate meat and drank wine to save other people. At that time he told many monks, "I enjoy meat as vegetables and drink wine as tea." In situations of benefiting sentient beings, eating meat, drinking wine, etc., can also be found in the realizations or biographies of some great masters in China, but these are not common behaviors. In our Tibetan region as well, according to each monastery's tradition, not all monks need to adopt some profound and unfathomable behaviors. On this point, I think those who have come to Tibet to study and visited each monastery should know what Tibetan Buddhism's emphasis on precepts is like. In Tibetan Buddhism, before reaching a certain level of realization, they also don't allow such extraordinary behaviors. Of course, if some exceptional individuals have them, then perhaps they indeed have such realization, or perhaps they themselves lack realization and are acting improperly. This exists in any school as well. So here we must clearly distinguish the boundaries between good and bad. Otherwise, worldly people may often be confused about these issues. Before attaining a certain level of realization, pretending and beginning to practice evil deeds is also unreasonable. When one truly has a kind of transcendent realization, their performance of such behaviors, as often taught in the secret teachings, includes behaviors like a whirlwind and behaviors like a mute person, especially in the 21 behaviors taught in the Great Perfection. At the final stage, there are many unimaginable behaviors. So when we study Buddhism, you cannot generalize. Measuring everyone's behavior by your own standards or by the measure of pratimoksha vows is also not acceptable. You also cannot completely demand tantric behavior from all people. In this case, if your realization hasn't reached a certain level, adopting some contrary behaviors in your conduct is also unreasonable. So on these issues, studying basic knowledge is quite important for us. Lying is the same, if it's to protect lives facing desperate situations, or to protect the property of the 3 jewels, etc. Lying is also permitted. But deceiving others for selfish desires is absolutely not allowed. For example, when a hunter is chasing wild animals, a practitioner clearly sees the animal, but in order to save it, you lie saying, "I didn't see it at all." Speaking such a lie also doesn't violate the precepts. Or to protect the property of the 3 jewels, you say, "I don't have the key," or "the 3 jewels property isn't here." Speaking such lies is also permissible and should be reasonable. In the past, there was a person whose family member had died, and she said to Buddha Shakyamuni, "Can you find a way to—" It seems it was her son. "Bring him back to life? Can he come back to life?" Buddha said, "It should be no problem. I have one request for you. Go see which household you can find where no one has ever died, and if you can find a mustard seed from such a household, it should be no problem." That woman was rather naive and went everywhere looking, thinking she could find it. As a result, she couldn't find a single household where no one had ever died. Later, when she returned to Buddha, he said, "Don't blame me. Originally, if you had found this thing, I could have brought your family member back to life. But since you couldn't find it yourself, I have no way." Later, she also understood. Of course, Buddha clearly knew this would happen, but this was skillful lying. Just like us worldly people, for example, someone who is seriously ill with cancer, if a doctor immediately says, "Oh, you're finished, you're going to die soon. If you have cancer, you might die immediately." in order to protect his life temporarily. Oh, it's nothing. Your illness isn't that serious. You can go back and take Chinese medicine for a while. After some time, when conditions ripen, come back for a checkup. Many hospitals nowadays also do this. This way he might feel there's nothing wrong. This is also a kind of skillful lying. Such kinds of lying are also permitted. So in Buddhism, it's not the case that all lying is prohibited without exception. It's not like that. But some people have wrong motivation. Originally, it's not for benefiting others, but all for themselves, because they already have a habit of lying or lie for their own benefit. This is definitely not allowed and has great faults. Lying is like this, and divisive speech is the same. For example, if a virtuous person and someone who likes doing evil are friends, and especially if the evildoer is powerful, out of concern that virtuous person might be led into the evil path, speaking divisive words to make them part ways is also permitted. Conversely, causing like-minded people's relationship to fall apart by speaking divisive words is not allowed and absolutely not permitted. So look at two people's behavior. Buddha also taught in the Sutra of the right mindfulness of Dharma. If a person associates with the unwholesome, they become unwholesome. Therefore, one should distance oneself from evil and not commit unwholesome deeds. Buddha has already spoken very clearly. We absolutely cannot associate with or befriend evil companions. If you associate with these evil people, then your own behavior will gradually become corrupted. In this case, first you should distance yourself from these evil people. But some people just won't listen and constantly associate with these bad people. Then if you find a way to say some divisive words to them, speaking some divisive words is also permitted. Harsh speech is the same. For people who truly cannot be tamed by gentle methods, only forceful means can make them enter the right Dharma. Also, when gurus give teachings and expose disciples' wrongdoings, etc., in these situations, speaking harsh words is permitted. As Venerable Atisha said, excellent gurus expose wrongdoings, excellent instructions hit the vital points. But harsh words that despise and insult others are not permitted. Speaking harsh words for some especially stubborn people, speaking gentle and soft words to them doesn't work. Some people, the better you treat them, the harder they are to guide. Then using rather forceful methods or manifesting wrathful aspects and speaking harsh words, conducting severe criticism in various situations, this way they will still correct their mistakes. Especially as a guru, you cannot always be the good guy. Not pointing out anyone's faults. This shouldn't be the case. You should expose their wrongdoings. Exposing wrongdoings is a quality of an excellent guru. Also, excellent instructions hit the vital points. They must be most essential. It seems when some gurus give teachings, many disciples think, oh, today I'm being criticized again. It seems everything the guru says is directed at me as the target, aimed specifically at me. Besides this, there's no one else. Every day I'm being criticized. If you think this way, then indeed it hits the vital points. This is very important. What the guru teaches today has nothing to do with me. Every day he just praises me. If this is the case, we ordinary people simply cannot understand our own mistakes. Finally, our own behavior becomes increasingly improper. So speaking harsh words, especially teachers criticizing students and gurus criticizing disciples, these are allowed. You cannot say, oh, because Guru, you spoke harsh words, you violated the precepts. First you should be expelled, and after you're expelled, then I'll speak. It shouldn't be like this. Now, in our Tibetan region as well, there are some similar intellectuals who all say our people should be equal, teachers and students should be equal, gurus and disciples should be equal. If we truly want to establish peaceful coexistence and democratic concepts, definitely all people must be equal. This is some people's excessive democratism, which is completely impossible. If so, then the treatment of a national president and a beggar should also be equal. How could this be? Throughout history, there's never been such an example. Some people are too extreme. Moreover, if gurus and disciples were to be completely equal, perhaps on the level of Buddha nature essence, we've also been continuously studying the lion's roar on Buddha nature recently. Everyone can say that teachers, gurus, and sentient beings are all equal. This can be said. But if in conventional appearances all the guru's qualities of discipline, concentration, and wisdom, and all qualities were completely equal to the disciples, this would probably be quite difficult. If students and teachers were to be equal, then students' salaries and teachers' salaries should also be equal. Probably no school could implement this. So, conventionally speaking, when a guru takes disciples, there should also be some teachings. Some teachings are necessary. This doesn't count as harsh speech, nor can you say, oh, the guru speaks harsh words every day, so he must have violated the precepts. According to the Sutra of 100 Actions, speaking one harsh word has such and such consequences for 500 lifetimes, so first judging a guru like this is also unreasonable. Idle chatter is the same. For some people who love to talk, silent restraint cannot make them enter the right dharma. Some people especially love to talk. When they first enter Buddhism, they keep talking and talking. They talk for 2 days and nights straight about how they used to be. Especially their own stories. They tell so many. If you want to guide such people, if you don't say a single word, they might lose faith. It's impossible. So if they love to talk, initially we should go along with them and you also talk with them. They talk about wars and the process of Hollywood in America. I once met someone who kept talking more and more. At night he couldn't sleep because he kept talking. After falling asleep, when he woke up, he was still talking. In front of such people, you still need skillful means to let them enter Buddhism. In the time of Buddha Kashyapa, there was a bodhisattva who went to guide non-Buddhists. After going there, the non-Buddhists were very dissatisfied with Buddha and constantly slandered him. Then he also joined them in first slandering Buddha. Later, when they all had trust in him, when they trusted him, only then did he gradually lead them into Buddhism. But his slandering of Buddha at that time did not constitute wrongdoing. When Bodhisattva Manjushri went among non-Buddhists to spread Mahayana Buddhism, it was also like this. So sometimes some of us exceptional individuals without skillful means. From the beginning, don't say a single word to anyone. If this is the case, some beginner's mindset is completely different from those who have studied for a long time. Therefore, initially speaking, some idle chatter in front of such people is permitted in such situations. But nonsensical talk that confuses one's own and others' minds is not permitted. You yourself generate afflictions and make others' minds also generate greed, anger, and ignorance. Such nonsensical talk cannot be permitted. So the above has explained the 7 types of physical and verbal wrongdoings. As long as they benefit sentient beings, they can be permitted. The only prerequisite is that they benefit sentient beings. If there's no benefit to sentient beings and one acts driven by afflictions, this is not permitted. As for the 3 mental wrongdoings of greed, anger, and wrong views, there's no possibility of them transforming into virtuous motivation. Because they themselves are greed, anger, and ignorance, they cannot be transformed. So the Precious Garland also teaches greed, anger, ignorance, and actions arising from them are unwholesome. Non-greed, non-anger, non-ignorance, and actions arising from them are wholesome. What arises from greed, anger, and ignorance are all evil deeds. What arises from non-greed, non-anger, and non-ignorance are virtuous deeds. So first of all, our mind is very important. As soon as evil thoughts arise, it's necessarily non-virtuous action. Therefore, at any time, for anyone, there's no permission for this. All virtuous actions are completely determined by the mind. If there's greed, anger, and ignorance, then this is non-virtuous action. Non-virtuous actions have no place for permission. So, the Flower Ornament Sutra also teaches, all actions arise from mind. Therefore, mind is said to be like illusion. If one is free from such conceptual thoughts, all realms of existence completely cease. All actions depend on mind for their arising, and the essence of mind is also illusory. So if one is free from such conceptual thoughts, then the 3 realms and 6 destinies are all non-existent. So the only source of good and evil is this mind of ours. Everything is created by mind. Everything is due to mind. This is taught in the Sutra of the Right Mindfulness of Dharma. Everything is created by mind. Everything is due to mind. The creator of everything is mind. The cause of everything is one's own mind. So if your mind is virtuous, it brings happiness. If your mind is evil, it brings suffering. Therefore, the precious garland also teaches, non-virtue gives rise to all suffering and casts one into the lower realms. Virtue gives rise to higher realms and enjoyment of peace in every life. Virtuous actions produce higher realms, and one obtains happiness life after life. The creator of all virtuous and non-virtuous actions is solely this mind of ours. Although every movement of the body and every word spoken may not be revealed outwardly, the conceptual thoughts in the mind often bring about tremendous virtuous results and serious evil consequences. Everyone must pay attention to this point. Outwardly and formally, it's indeed not very important. If our mind is virtuous, then everything is virtuous. If the mind is virtuous, the path is virtuous. If the mind is evil, the path is evil. If the mind is not virtuous, it often brings serious transgressions. So generating a single moment of virtuous thought is also very important for us. Buddha taught in the sutras, it should be in the sutra of the right mindfulness of Dharma. If one hears the right Dharma, receives its meaning, and generates one virtuous thought, it can eliminate countless hundreds of thousands of eons of birth and death. So listening to Dharma is truly very important for us. Just now at noon, Khenpo Tsultrim Lodra called me. He said, What are you doing? I said, I'm in a state of joy. What joyful state? I said, there's a very good scriptural quotation in the Sutra of the Right Mindfulness of Dharma. I'm contemplating this. Listening to Dharma is very important for us. Many other things are not important. He said, what did it say? I said, if one listens to this Dharma and receives its meaning, generating one thought can eliminate millions of eons of birth and death. I think Buddha spoke especially well. He said, Truly, for all of us present here, studying Buddhism and contemplating Buddhism in daily life is most meaningful. Many other things, of course, things that benefit sentient beings, we consider very good. If they're actions that tame one's own afflictions, they're very good. Besides this, all the various worldly dharmas now, perhaps each person's values and lifestyle habits are different. After all, we have spent a long time in such a place of study and contemplation. Even generating one virtuous thought is very precious. We all attend classes. I really like that everyone has classes every day. Why? On days when we attend classes, at least during the time of teaching, as the speaker, I cannot generate evil thoughts while teaching. The door to all my evil thoughts is basically blocked. This is also a very rare opportunity for me. For many people attending the classes, some people might suddenly generate some conceptual thoughts, but most of the time, 70 to 80%, however it is, they're in the Dharma meaning, their minds following these Dharma meanings. So I feel that for us as ordinary people, this should be considered a very precious experience. You can also gradually contemplate this yourselves, so each of us should frequently observe our own mental state. If we're in a virtuous state of mind, we should properly generate joy and try to make virtuous actions increase day by day. If we're in a state of evil intention, we must immediately repent and secretly reproach ourselves. I'm truly a very evil person. Although I've listened to so much right Dharma, I still generate such evil conceptual thoughts. How shameful. And resolve, from now on, I must strive so that such evil conceptual thoughts never arise in my mind stream again. We should also frequently observe our own mental state in daily life. This is a habit. If you frequently observe like this, you can recognize, sometimes while I'm listening to Dharma here, after listening for such a long time, I still generate conceptual thoughts. I also reproach myself. Some people have also practiced for many years, yet sometimes generate anger and greed. At such times they start crying in front of others. I've already practiced for so much time, yet I still generate such thoughts. I truly have no face to see the Guru and three jewels. Now I feel I'm not even a human being. The more I discover about myself, the more I am a particularly hateful person. Some people truly deeply recognize that they are particularly evil people. This is also a level of spiritual realization, because all of Buddha's true Dharma principles, when summarized, are a kind heart and virtuous conduct. I read in Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche's summary of teachings of the Buddhas of 3 times, a teaching that says, all the profound and vast principles of the Tathagatas of the 3 times are contained in virtuous mind and conduct. Those with connection should practice this. All the profound and vast teachings of the Tathagatas of the 3 times, if summarized, are simply a kind heart and virtuous conduct, that is, not harming others and adjusting one's own mind, such conduct. So those with the connection must realize our Guru Rinpoche, especially I remember very clearly when he went to America, at that time in Washington and Boston and several places, he gave many profound pith instructions to these Westerners. On the surface it seemed like ordinary language, but actually at that time many people felt they benefited immensely. They had listened to teachings from many great masters, but finally they suddenly awakened. The true summarized meaning of Buddha's 84,000 teachings is having a kind heart. At that time in the Guru's pith instructions, he mainly emphasized revealing this very teaching. Therefore we should know, if one's mind is kind, everything is good. If the mind is not kind, whatever virtuous deeds you do outwardly are not very important. If the mind is virtuous, truly all virtue and all happiness come along with it. I remember in China there's also a book called The Moral Education of the Past. It seems this story is also in the Supreme Exhortation of the Response and Retribution collection. There was a person called Yuan Zishi who had a friend called Miyukai. Perhaps this person had shown him certain kindness, but it seems this person was ungrateful and wouldn't repay his kindness at all. Later, Zishi generated an evil thought and planned to kill him. One morning he took weapons and rushed to this person's house. At that time, there was a hermitage in between. A hermitage is a nunnery. Now many female monastics places are monasteries, but in the past they were thatched huts called hermitages. There are Taoist hermitages and Buddhist ones too. Inside there was Master Xuanyuan who was practicing while chanting in the morning. While chanting, that Zishi passed by there. He probably had some special supernatural powers. He saw behind this person many evil demons and evil spirits, each holding different knives, spears, and various weapons. Following him were about 100 evil demons and non-humans, following him with menacing presence. Their mindset and expressions were also extremely angry, thus they passed by. After some time, that Zishi who planned to kill this person arrived at his door. Then he thought about it. This person is very bad, but his wife and children and his parents are also very pitiful. If I kill him, I'll directly harm these people. So he generated a thought. Forget it. Although this person is ungrateful, I still won't kill him. If I kill him, it would be bad for all the other people. Therefore he generated a virtuous thought and returned. That Xuanyuan saw this same person coming back again. When returning, following him were all protective deities of white Dharma. They all held various auspicious objects, flower garlands, incense, and so forth. Moreover, their expressions were also extremely joyful. Later, he specifically went to ask what exactly happened to you. He said, nothing else. When I went there, I wanted to kill him, but then I generated good thoughts, so when returning, I didn't want to kill him. Later, Xuanyuan understood very clearly. When a person generates an evil thought on the surface, actually behind them there are many non-humans helping them, and they also hold various weapons to help them. If a person generates a good thought, then many protective deities of white Dharma also follow them. He explained this situation to him, and after explaining it, from then on he also properly practiced virtue. I've forgotten some of the later details, but roughly this is the story. So we think, whether a person is a monastic or lay practitioner, if their mind is particularly evil, then not only is it their own mindset, but nearby there may also be many evil demons, non-humans, yakshas and rakshasas who also help them prepare to harm beings. If a person generates particularly virtuous thoughts, aspiring to benefit all beings universally, generating compassion and virtue, generating respect, pure mind and joy toward the Guru and Three Jewels. With such a mindset, they themselves live particularly happily, and the entire surrounding atmosphere of the whole world also becomes harmonious. This is also a natural law. So this principle, every one of our Dharma friends must definitely have such understanding in their hearts. This is very important. If your mind is often in a state of happiness or altruism, your body and mind should be, even without seeing doctors or taking medicine, naturally your body will be in a state where your four elements are in harmony, in a state that is not chaotic. If you generate particularly strong thoughts of harming others, then your own four elements will also be imbalanced, and the entire surrounding atmosphere, including the volunteers beside you, will feel uncomfortable. A person's complexion will also be bad. And when opening and closing doors, it's bang, bang. This is not good. Whether we're doing any virtuous deed, first we must carefully and thoroughly observe our own motivation. If it's truly virtuous motivation, then that thing should be done. Look at whether your mind is virtuous or not. This is very crucial. If it's in a mentality of competing with others or pretending craving fame and such mindsets, then you must seriously correct this. For example, if you want to hold a Dharma assembly or conduct an activity today, before doing any virtuous deed, first look at whether your mind is virtuous or not. If your mind is virtuous, then do it. There's nothing to ask about. You don't need to ask others. If your mind is not virtuous, see if you can correct it. If you can correct it, then you can continue to do it sustained by bodhicitta and virtuous mind. If no matter what, you cannot reverse your motivation, then it's better to postpone doing that virtuous deed, because if you do that virtuous deed completely with selfish mind or even with bad mindsets of competing with others, then this won't work. Indulging this mind destroys one's virtuous deeds. It seems this is taught in the Sutra of the Buddha's last teaching. If your mind has become excessively careless, then this person has already lost virtuous deeds and cannot have merit. If your mindset is not properly adjusted, then no matter how grand the form of virtuous deeds you perform outwardly, there's no real meaning. In the past, many sponsors had arranged to come visit Geshe Ben Kungyal. That morning, the Geshe also thought, "Oh, many sponsors are coming today. After they arrive, I should make the shrine hall extremely clean and dignified." Then the Geshe began hurriedly arranging offerings before the Three Jewels representations, Buddha statues and stupas, decorating them extremely beautifully. At that time, he observed his own motivation and discovered it was actually to appear dignified before the sponsors, an impure mindset. "Oh, many guests are coming today, so I must clean everything thoroughly." This kind of mindset is very bad, wanting these people to be pleased or showing off in front of these people. So he casually scattered a handful of ashes over the Three Jewels representations and offerings, saying to himself, "You monk, don't be so hypocritical, okay?" Ben Kungyal was quite amusing. This matter later came to the attention of Venerable Padampa Sangye. After learning about it, Padampa Sangye said very seriously, "Among all the offerings in Tibet, Ben Kungyal's handful of ashes is the best." Although Tibet is not particularly wealthy, many people especially like making offerings before the Three Jewels representations. Among all the offerings, Ben Kungyal's handful of ashes is most excellent and meritorious. Why? Because generally, when we scatter ashes, according to Tibetan folk tradition, we usually scatter a handful of ashes at demons and evil people. It's like this. For example, when we exorcise demons, we also scatter ashes, or when someone with whom we have a particularly bad relationship has already left our group or home. There's also a tradition of scattering a handful of ashes. But Ben Kungyal scattered a handful of ashes before Buddha statues and stupas. This behavior is incomprehensible to ordinary people. What was he doing? He was adjusting his own mindset. My way of doing this is too detestable. He immediately punished himself. Actually, Ben Kungyal, we spoke about him before in opening the door of mind training, was a person who wore several knives of various lengths on his body. Moreover, he was also tall, and when he was a layperson, he was particularly fierce. Some children, when they often needed to be frightened, "You listen to me, or else Ben Kungyal is coming." The children immediately wouldn't dare move. According to some stories, there was an old lady passing by, and because this old lady was particularly afraid of Ben Kungyal, someone nearby deliberately frightened her, saying, "Hey, so-and-so, Ben Kungyal is in front of you." As a result, the old lady remained motionless there, frightened to death. She actually died. So when Ben Kungyal was a lay person, he committed all kinds of evil, such a bad person. But later, after he became ordained, he himself also said, "In the past I had countless enemies. Even wearing several knives on my body couldn't stop the enemies, but after becoming ordained, I don't even have a needle, yet all enemies have been completely pacified." This is also the blessing of ordination, his kind of offering. From these stories we truly must understand. Actually, correcting one's own mistakes is very important. We must frequently observe our own mental state. Therefore, we must carefully observe our own mind stream at all times and places. Once our mindset becomes improper and signs of wrongdoing appear, we must immediately become aware of it. We ordinary people cannot be without wrongdoing, but once your mind becomes unwholesome, you must recognize it and repent. Confess the past and guard the future. Absolutely cannot let your mind stream go along with negative actions. Of course, at the stage of ordinary beings, not generating evil thoughts in motivation and application in the mind stream is also unrealistic. We ordinary people generally often generate evil thoughts. This is also a normal phenomenon. It's impossible for you to never generate them. So Ben Kungyal, although he later became ordained and practiced, retreating in the mountains for many years, he also frequently needed to struggle with afflictions during his practice. In the process of struggle, sometimes he failed, sometimes he achieved victory. Once Ben Kungyal was practicing in the mountains. One time he came down to chant scriptures for sponsors at their home. At that time all the sponsors had gone out and weren't at home. The Geshe looked around in the empty house, pondering. When he returned to his mountain cave, he probably had no food, especially for brewing tea. He had no tea leaves. Generally, some elderly Tibetans and practitioners in the past especially liked brewing very strong tea. Then he looked around. He had no tea leaves, so why not take the opportunity to steal some tea leaves to save for later use in the mountains? At that time, he put his hand into the tea bag. Generally in Tibet, tea leaves are also kept in bags, and tsampa is also in bags. After those owners went out, the tea bag was probably left nearby. He looked east and west, no family members. Wanting to steal tea leaves, he was putting his hand into the tea bag. Right at this moment, he already discovered his own mistake. Sustained by mindfulness and vigilance, he immediately aroused right mindfulness. So he shouted loudly, "Sponsors, come here quickly. This bad person is stealing your tea leaves. This person's hand should be cut off at the wrist." He shouted loudly like this. Practitioners like Ben Kungyal always discovered their own mistakes. Moreover, when he discovered mistakes, he never acted like us. When we have mistakes, we often shift blame. It wasn't me, he did it. Worldly people in the past also had this saying about Confucius's disciple Yan Hui. He doesn't shift blame and doesn't repeat mistakes. He wouldn't push his faults onto others, and he wouldn't commit the same fault twice. After committing a fault once, from then on, he would definitely never have it again. In the standards for students and child that we teach, it also says, if faults can be corrected, they become non-existent. If covered up, one adds another transgression. If faults can be corrected, these faults become non-existent. This is the best approach for a wise person. Who can be without faults? It's impossible to have no faults. If we cover them up, "I didn't steal, it's someone else's business," I would never think like that. "But because that person was so bad at the time, so can't you go find him? Actually, it wasn't me, not at all." Such statements are unreasonable. Therefore, when Ben Kungyal discovered his own mistakes, of course at that time there were no other people, so perhaps there was no other way. He called for the sponsors to come himself. "My hand has already gone into the tea bag, so cut off my wrist." Because this hand was mainly committing the mistake, perhaps he was also shifting blame a bit. "It's not me, this hand made the mistake, so this should be cut off." Is this what he meant? Venerable Atisha was also like this. Since I personally entered the door of individual liberation, I can be said to be spotless. When Atisha reflected on his own mistakes, he had never violated even a minor precept among the Pratimoksha vows. Regarding the Bodhisattva trainings, that is, Bodhisattva vows, occasionally there were one or two faults. After entering the Vajrayana Tantric vows, although he had sporadically committed repeated mistakes, he always repented immediately, and never let downfalls stay overnight. The Venerable One was the same while traveling. Whenever evil thoughts flashed, he immediately took out a wooden mandala plate and repented immediately. There's such an account. Everywhere he always carried this wooden mandala plate. Wherever he generated evil thoughts, he immediately stopped right then, and began offering mandala on the road. He offered mandala before all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and repented. After finishing, the evil thoughts from before were already purified through repentance. Then he began walking again. We don't have such habits now. If we really had such habits when riding in a car, driver, stop quickly. I need to offer mandala. I generated an evil thought. If Atisha didn't have cars then but had cars, perhaps he would have done this, stopping the car several times along the way. But we wouldn't do this. Generating thoughts doesn't matter to us. Sometimes we don't even notice and just continue like this. So good practitioners and bad practitioners indeed have certain differences in behavior. The Mahaparinirvana Sutra also teaches there are two types of people in the world, and these two types are very rare. First, those who don't commit evil deeds, those who don't create negative karma at all, who don't commit evil deeds. Second, those who can repent when they have faults. Such people are extremely rare. The Mahaparinirvana Sutra teaches this. Such people are extremely rare. These two types of people are very rare, like ephemeral flowers appearing in the world. Those who are never contaminated by transgressions, especially like lotus flowers not touched by water, such people in samsara are truly like lotus flowers in fire. Very remarkable. There's another type who, although due to evil connections from past lives and habitual tendencies, often commit wrongdoings. But after committing mistakes, they immediately repent and immediately discover them. After discovering them in their hearts, we have a saying in Tibet, immediately recite Vajrasattva's mantra. This is very good when generating evil thoughts. Om Vajrasattva Hum. When generating wrong views or greed, we often do this. This habit is also very good. A while ago, one of our administrators was speaking to the monastics. Our academy generally requires that when speaking Tibetan, don't use mixed language, don't mix in some Chinese. When using Chinese, still speak Mandarin. Don't mix some Tibetan in. But in Tibet, this is very common. One administrator, while speaking Tibetan, suddenly said tractor. He was probably embarrassed and immediately recited Om Vajrasattva Hum. Actually, saying tractor doesn't require repentance. So when we generate evil thoughts, immediately repent with Om Vajrasattva Hum. Or when you speak of others' faults, oh, this person is very bad, Nonja Om Vajrasattva Hum. I can't say this. Immediately discover, immediately repent. This is also very important. Some people now have no such habits at all, especially those just beginning to study Buddhism. It seems whatever evil thoughts you generate, it doesn't matter. There won't be anything wrong. Oh, I'm not wrong. So our mind is very important. The words of my perfect teacher is truly a very important pith instruction. I also recently required them to record the words of my perfect teacher, an aspiration to be reborn in the pure realm of Sukhavati. Many people record them on MP3 or play them while driving. The original text repeatedly in their minds. If there are some things you can truly understand and remember, it will have very great benefit for your behavior and many other aspects. This is one story. Also at a place called Kungyal, sponsors were offering yogurt among the assembly of many Geshes. At that time, Ben Kungyal was also there, sitting in the monastic assembly. He saw the sponsors first offering large amounts of yogurt to those seated in the front rows. Naturally and involuntarily he thought, such good yogurt, by the time it reaches me, it will almost certainly all be gone. There won't be a share for me. We also often have this feeling when distributing things, especially when distributing some good Dharma books or good food. Sometimes when I distribute some candy here, many people in the back think, oh, it will definitely be finished in the front. There's no way. If we had a Ben Kungyal here, how wonderful that would be. He was thinking this way. When such thoughts arose, he immediately aroused right mindfulness and recognized that his thinking was wrong, so he secretly reproached himself. You monk, you actually have such great faith in drinking yogurt, but you don't have great faith in the Guru and 3 jewels. You have such great faith in yogurt. So he immediately punished himself by turning his bowl upside down. When the person making offerings came to him and invited him to enjoy the yogurt because he had generated evil thoughts, the Geshe said to this person offering yogurt, "I've already had some and really don't want any more. I've already eaten my fill. Thank you. Sorry. No need. I've already eaten very well. I've already fed myself yogurt quite well." Originally, he just wanted to receive an equal share with all the monks. This didn't contain any unwholesome elements. Along with all the Geshes in the monastic assembly receiving a share, there was nothing unwholesome about this. But merely because he thought he had a selfish mind, hoping to obtain good yogurt, he completely gave up enjoying it. He punished himself. Looking at some biographies of Ben Kungyal, sometimes he would shout loudly, "Ben Kungyal, why is your selfish mind so strong every day?" Sometimes he would start hitting himself. Some of his stories of struggling with afflictions are quite remarkable. In China, there are also some such great masters. Indeed, in our process of struggling with afflictions, many people must observe their own minds. At the beginning, we ordinary people are all the same. Our afflictions are particularly strong. If we continuously struggle for a long time, gradually the power of our afflictions will weaken. So we must observe our own mind stream with mindfulness and vigilance at all times and places. Only this way can we eliminate our own afflictions. If we observe our own mind stream at all times and places, abandoning evil and practicing virtue, taming our minds, over time our mind stream will transform into virtue. In the past there was a Brahmin named Ravi who frequently observed his mind. Whenever he generated an evil thought, he would place a black pebble. Whenever he generated a virtuous thought, he would place a white pebble. Initially they were all black, just like when many of us observe our minds. Every day there are evil thoughts. Through diligent practice and antidotes, abandoning evil and practicing virtue, in the middle period it appeared half white and half black. At the end, they all became completely white. I see such stories also in China's records of the Buddha's lineage. There are similar stories. There was someone called Venerable Upagupta who also initially adopted this method. Whenever he generated evil thoughts, he placed a black pebble. Whenever he generated virtuous thoughts, he placed white pebbles. At the beginning, there were particularly many black stones. At the end, they all became white. Through 7 days of effort, as a result, such conceptual thoughts in his mind stream were basically eliminated. Then, listening to his guru teach the Four Noble Truths, he attained the fruition of stream entry. In some histories of China, there are also such accounts. So we must observe with mindfulness and vigilance. At all times and places we should be sustained by mindfulness and vigilance, generating virtuous antidotes and striving not to be contaminated by even subtle negative actions. Every practitioner should make efforts in this regard, frequently observing this mind of ours, frequently praying to the Guru, Three Jewels, and Dharma protectors, frequently observing our own minds. Our mind is a conditioned phenomenon. The blessings and power of the Guru and Three Jewels are inconceivable. Definitely every person's mindset will transform. So the pith instructions of the words of my perfect teacher, I always feel they are indeed very excellent, very excellent. Otherwise, our own behavior would also be improper. Even if you become ordained, it's useless. If your behavior is truly improper and you lack mindfulness and vigilance, then you might spend all day living through wrong livelihood. In this case, monastics would be improper, and lay practitioners would also be improper. People might also discriminate against you, as taught in the Sutra of the Right Mindfulness of Dharma. Being ordained but living through wrong livelihood, one loses Dharma and loses reputation. Among people, light as grass, in the future entering the lower realms. If our ordination or practice is not in accordance with Dharma, then Dharma is also lost, and your reputation is merely a false name. People will also frequently see and point fingers, talking about your behavior. They'll trample you like grass and won't respect you. In this life you won't be happy, and in future lives you also won't be happy. If you use mindfulness and vigilance daily to observe your own mind stream and have an altruistic mind, then as taught in water tree treatises, people will also naturally gather around you. Wherever there is sweet spring water, many birds also gather there. Wherever there is someone who likes helping others and has a kind heart, whose behavior is also proper and in accordance with Dharma, who uses mindfulness and vigilance all day to observe their mental state, then in this life, around you many, many virtuous people will gather. In future lives, life after life, temporarily you'll enter higher realms and ultimately attain nirvana. So each one of us, relying on Buddhism's way of practicing virtue to counter our afflictions, practicing virtue and walking the path of light, this is very important. Good, we'll stop here for today.
Om